I'd like to tell you a story about three women I know. Each woman's story is different, just as each of us are different, but they all have one thing in common. The first time I met Brenda, saw her sitting on the side of the bed, clutching a walker. Her back was slightly bowed from osteoporosis, so I made certain assumptions about her. But it was pretty clear when we started talking that this vivacious woman who had been full of vitality was different than what I had assumed. A lot of people in the community know Brenda. She has a long career as the membership director of the local chamber. So pretty much everybody who's anybody knows Brenda. Sadly, the years hadn't been a friend to her. She had 8 surgeries on her hip alone, restricting her mobility. But she hasn't lost her spunk and her positive attitude, and that made working with her a joy. So we decided we're going to start in the bedroom because she wants it to be a more restful place. And looking around, we really have our work cut out for us. The room has kind of a musty smell of abandon. Piles everywhere. There's a few paths through the bedroom, but every horizontal surface otherwise is covered with boxes, bins, and bags. We start sorting through a container, and Brenda is excited to find an electric blanket. It had been a Christmas gift that had long ago been relegated to some corner pile. So she holds it up and says, "Oh, Gene will be so happy we found this." So Gene is her longtime friend and living companion. And his body's in better shape, but his mind has been deteriorating rapidly. So they're good for each other. They kind of fill in each other's gaps. So Brenda calls out to Gene, who comes ambling into the bedroom, wordlessly grabs the blanket, goes over to the other side of the bed, lies down, covers himself, and proceeds to take a nap right beside Brenda while we are working. It is an unconventional work environment, to say the least. Anyway, we keep going through things in her bedroom, and the truth is, really, we could have started in any room in the house. Mounds of belongings are in every room. I'm particularly worried about the floor because with Brenda's mobility issues, she really needs as much space as possible to navigate safely through the house. I mean, how can you guarantee safe passageway down the hallway when you can barely see half the floor? Brenda's goal for our time together is to prepare for an estate sale and a downsize. She's lived in her home for over 30 years, so it's well past time for that. And she's accepted that on a certain level, but as we start sorting through things, it's obvious she really hasn't done the math. She's got a 3,700 square foot house stuffed full of belongings, and she's looking at an 800 square foot senior living unit. She's not saying goodbye to many things. It seems no matter what I say, her tight grip on her possessions is unchanged. And I'm beginning to wonder, are we ever going to reach our goals? All right, so let me tell you about another person I know. Her name's Andrea. And if you are planning an event in our town and you need someone to be on your event committee, I recommend Andrea. She is amazing. She's like the feminine version of Midas because everything she touches turns to gold. Seriously, she's very good at that. And not only that, she's a part-time engineer, mother of 3 mostly grown children, a wife. She's a volunteer soccer coach, homeroom mother, ×3, of course. And did I mention how good she is at events? I mean, I get tired talking about all the things that Andrea does. So Andrea and I are meeting at a local pizzeria to discuss a project that we're working on together. And Andrea's late, which is not unusual for her. She texts me to let me know she's on her way, and then she finally comes in a few minutes later. She is out of breath and apologizes for being late. She tells me that the soccer tournament is going to have to be rescheduled, which is a problem because she's got a wedding shower she's hosting and all the dates are conflicting. And if I didn't already know Andrea was tired, then looking at her red eyes, dark circles under them, frequent yawning would be clear indications that she's a little overworked. Andrea is a driven extrovert, so she kind of loves this busy pace, but she also knows that it takes its toll sometimes. As we start talking about our project and our individual responsibilities, she gets kind of a glazed look on her face. She says, she says she's sorry, she's not herself today. She and her husband got into a big discussion this morning about her schedule again, and he says he doesn't feel like they have enough time as a family, and she says he's probably right, but she doesn't know what to do about it because she can't just stop everything because everybody's relying on her. I can sense the tension because I know that she wants to do an excellent job at everything she does. She loves the volunteer work that she does in the community, and it's part of her service to God. It's something she's very good at, but she just is really having trouble letting things go, and she can't decide how to balance her schedule so that she has enough time with her family. All right, so let me tell you about the third woman. Her name is Jessie, and she's a small business owner and entrepreneur. Her days are filled with client meetings, writing her blog, posting on social media, checking the financials, taking online courses. She loves running her business. She comes alive, constantly thinking of new ways she can promote the business, new ideas. She's well known in the industry, even though she's fairly new to it. She's just on fire for her business. So she was telling me about a conversation that she had with her husband one day after work. It was 5:30 or 6 or whatever time she quit. She seems to have a hard time kind of switching off work and adjusting back to home. So she was asking him whether he had done an interview that day and how it went. So he starts telling her about, the guy that, he was pretty obvious from the beginning. He didn't know what he was talking about, so he's probably not going to be a good hire. And Jessie kind of stops and says, "Wait, who are you talking about?" And so he said, "You remember you asked me about whether I had an interview?" She's like, "Oh yeah, okay." So this is common for her. She can ask a question, but before the person has finished answering, she totally forgot what she asked because her brain is just constantly going. So she said, "Oh gosh, yeah, okay, sorry. I was trying to figure out how to get my articles turned in because I'm in the busy season. I've got back-to-back clients. Oh, and did I tell you about that new idea that I had for the virtual membership?" And so just like that, conversation turns from his day to her day, which is kind of the pattern most of the time. Before you know it, be talking about her work. So she talks about how overwhelmed she is, and then he asks if there's any way that he can help, and then she cries and he consoles her and she apologizes and he offers to clean up dinner, and it's the same thing. Same song, different verse about every night. Jessie really has a hard time being present wherever's going on. Her mind is just going on work all the time. So Jessie's got an issue with keeping her mind still and focused. All right, so I've told you about 3 different women. They're very different life situations, but they all have one thing in common: clutter. You may not think about clutter when you think about Andrea and Jessie. For Brenda, the mounds of belongings in the home, that kind of clutter is something we all identify with because that's what we tend to think about as far as clutter. But the truth is that clutter goes a lot deeper than just stuff. Clutter is anything really that gets in the way of our priorities. So Brenda, her physical clutter is really obvious, but for Andrea, the clutter problem she has is with too many activities on her schedule and staying so busy that she doesn't have time for things that are important, like time with her family. And Jessie, her clutter is also invisible, and it's more what's going on in her mind, how she can't really be focused on what's going on because our mind is going a million miles an hour. You may be able to relate to one of these women, or maybe more than one. And I can definitely relate to one of these women. In fact, not only can I relate to one of these women, I am one of these women. I am Jessie, that small business owner who is constantly thinking about work, even when she's at home. And the issue that I have with attention clutter, the conversation with my husband about asking him a question and then forgetting what I asked and then starting to talk about work again. This is a conversation that happens frequently in our home. Not only that, but other family members and friends noticed my overdependence on my phone and being more focused on answering a text or reading an email or checking social media than having a conversation with them. So that attention clutter drawing my mind away has been a real issue in my life. And I'll talk more about that in further sections of the study. But in this study, we're going to be talking about the broad definition of clutter, all the different ways that it manifests, the consequences, looking at a biblical perspective about clutter, and examining our own lives to see if we can identify any clutter and use God's word to clear that away so that we spend the time on things that are important and we can see God and serve him more clearly. So I'm excited about taking this journey with you to talk about clutter, to look at God's word, and to use it to help us to focus more on him.